The galaxy had always underestimated humanity. For 3 centuries, humans had played the role of the diplomatic newcomers eager to please, quick to compromise, and desperately seeking acceptance among the ancient civilizations that dominated the Galactic Council. They smiled through condescension, nodded through insults, and swallowed their pride when treated as little more than primitive upstarts who had stumbled into interstellar travel by sheer luck. Alexa Chen had been one of those diplomats. As Earth's representative to the Outer Rim territories, she had spent 15 years perfecting the art of the gracious smile, the measured response, the careful dance of words that never quite said what she really meant. She had watched species with a fraction of humanity's ingenuity dismiss their achievements. She had sat through countless sessions where Earth's proposals were laughed at, their warnings ignored, their contributions minimized. But Alexa had always believed in the process. She had faith that patience would win the day, that eventually, the galaxy would see humans for what they truly were. That faith died on Colony World Meridian 7. The Zalther Dominion had been expanding aggressively for decades, swallowing smaller territories and enslaving populations with impunity. The Galactic Council had done nothing but issue stern warnings and impose sanctions that the Dominion ignored. When the Zalther set their sights on the human agricultural colony of Meridian 7, Earth had pleaded for intervention. Alexa herself had stood before the Council, her voice breaking as she described the 15,000 civilians, farmers, teachers, children who would be in danger. The Council had voted to monitor the situation. 3 days later, the Zalther fleet arrived at Meridian 7 and unleashed a bombardment that turned fertile fields into ash and thriving settlements into mass graves. 14,732 humans died in the first hour. By the time the attack ended, only 218 survivors remained, huddled in emergency bunkers deep underground. The galaxy expressed its condolences. The Council called for an investigation, and humanity realized that patience had been a mistake. Nox Ramirez had never been a patient man. As the commander of Earth's experimental warship, the Retribution, he had spent years arguing that humanity needed to stop asking for permission and start demanding respect. He had been called a warmonger, a relic of humanity's violent past, someone who didn't understand the complexities of galactic politics. When the news from Meridian 7 reached him, Nox didn't feel vindicated. He felt rage pure, cold, and absolute. Within hours of the massacre, every human diplomat was recalled from their posts. Alexa found herself on a transport back to Earth, still in shock, still seeing the images of Meridian 7's burning surface every time she closed her eyes. She had failed those people. Her words, her diplomacy, her belief in the system, it had all been worthless. When she arrived at Earth's military command center, she barely recognized the woman who looked back at her from the mirror. The diplomat was gone. In her place stood someone who had learned a terrible lesson. The galaxy only respected strength. Nox was waiting for her in the war room, along with representatives from every major human military branch and the newly formed Terran Defense Initiative. The room was filled with grim faces and clenched fists. "They think we're weak," Nox said without preamble. "They think we'll issue a statement, maybe impose some sanctions of our own, and then go back to begging for scraps at their table. What are we going to do?" Alexa asked, her voice hoarse. Nox's smile was cold and sharp. "We're going to show them what humans are really capable of. We're done being polite." The operation took 6 weeks to plan. The Zalther Dominion controlled 17 systems, with their military command centered on the fortress world of Zalprime. Their fleet was considered one of the most powerful in the galaxy, their warriors bred for combat, their technology refined over millennia. They had never faced humanity. Unchained, the attack began at 400 Galactic Standard Time. The Retribution led a fleet of 37 human warships, vessels that the galaxy had dismissed as primitive, built with technology that was centuries behind the Council's standards. What the galaxy had failed to understand was that humans had spent those 3 centuries studying, adapting, and improving. They had taken every scrap of knowledge they could acquire and weaponized it with a creativity that only a species born from conflict could muster. The Zalther sensors detected the human fleet too late. By the time their defenses activated, Nox's ships had already deployed their secret weapon, impulse mines that didn't just disable shields. They rewrote the enemy ship's own systems against them. Alexa watched from the Retribution's bridge as the Zalther fleet turned on itself, their own weapons firing at their own vessels. It was chaos, beautiful and terrible. Target their command stations, Nox ordered. No survivors. The words sent a chill through Alexa, but she didn't protest. She thought of the children on Meridian 7, of the families who had died screaming, of the galaxy that had watched and done nothing. The battle lasted for hours. When it ended, the Zalther Dominion's military capability had been reduced to wreckage floating in the void. Nox didn't stop there. Human forces systematically dismantled every Zalther military installation, every weapons factory, every shipyard. They left the civilian population untouched, but they made sure the Dominion would never threaten anyone again. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session. There were calls for sanctions against Earth, demands that humanity be expelled from civilized space, threats of retaliation. Alexa stood before them once more, but this time she wasn't asking for anything. "You had your chance to be civilized," she said, her voice carrying across the chamber. "You chose to let our people die. So now you know the truth about humanity. We came to you with open hands and hopeful hearts. We wanted to be your friends, your partners, your equals. But you mistook our kindness for weakness." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "We're not weak. We're terrifying. We're the species that climbed to the top of our food chain on a death world, that survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed us. We're the species that split the atom just to see what would happen, that turned our oceans into highways and our sky into a playground. We held ourselves back because we thought you deserved better from us." Alexa's eyes swept across the assembled representatives, meeting each gaze with unflinching intensity. "We were wrong. So here's your new reality. Earth is done being polite. We're done asking permission. We're done begging for recognition. From now on, we'll defend our people and our interests with whatever force is necessary. And if that makes us the monsters of this galaxy, so be it. At least our children will be safe." She turned and walked out, leaving the council in stunned silence. The galaxy learned quickly. Human ships began patrolling the trade routes, offering protection to any species that wanted it for a price. Human colonies expanded rapidly, and no one dared object. The Terran Federation, as Earth now called itself, became a power that demanded respect. Nox and Alexa worked together in this new era. He commanded the fleets that enforced humanity's will, while she rebuilt humanity's diplomatic corps not as supplicants, but as equals who negotiated from a position of strength. They never forgot Meridian 7. Every ship in the Terran fleet carried the names of the dead etched into its hull. Every officer swore an oath to never let humanity be victims again. The galaxy had wanted humanity to be civilized. They had gotten their wish, just not in the way they expected, because humanity had learned that true civilization wasn't about being polite. It was about being strong enough to protect what mattered, and ruthless enough to punish those who crossed the line. Earth had announced it was done being polite. The galaxy was still learning what that meant.